Hey everyone, welcome to the video. We are breaking down the Drydene 400 at Dover International Speedway, aka the Monster Mile. Nice to get back to a somewhat normal track after Bristol Dirt and Talladega. While those are fun for entertainment purposes, for DFS it's a little bit harder to project. So it is kind of nice to get back to a somewhat normal track, although it is not the easiest track out there to navigate, and we saw that in practice. We saw Keselowski mentioned they wish they had a full practice session, and we did see several spinouts, and you're going to see several chalk drivers that are starting way deep in the pack, especially one big one that I have my eye on heading to the weekend that everyone is going to be talking about. So it might be another chaotic week. Hopefully not. Hopefully practice and qualifying was able to shuffle that out a little bit, but it still should be a fun one nonetheless. And as always, if you are brand new here, my name is Chris Pennell. I break down the NASCAR DFS slate each and every single weekend on this channel. You can also find me live on Sunday morning and live over on the Awesome YouTube channel before lock, breaking down the entire slate, answering any questions you may end up having. You can also find me over on their website, writing articles as well. And if you do end up enjoying today's free content, all I ask in return is if you can leave a like on the video. If we can get 350 plus again, that would be awesome. I truly do appreciate it. And make sure you subscribe if you haven't already and turn the notification bell so you don't miss out whenever I post new content or go live on Sunday mornings. Always fun to have you guys in there. Talk it up, ask all the questions you want. I will try to answer all of them and break down the entire slate for you. And feel free to leave a comment down below agreeing or disagreeing with anything I have to say throughout this video. Or if you just want to tell me hi or I suck, you can feel free to do that as well. It'll only hurt my feelings a little bit, but I will get over it. And sliding right over onto our preview, as previously mentioned, this is the Drydene 400. It'll take place on Sunday, May 1st at around 3 p.m. Eastern. Green flag, probably what, 3:15, 3:17, something like that. We are at Dover International Speedway, aka the Monster Mile. It is an oval, steep, concrete, short track. It's 1 mile in length. We have 400 laps, which means close to 300 total dominator points. So yes, dominator points are going to be very important this week. So making sure you get at least 2 dominator laps will be quite important. Although with the way qualifying shaked out, it does make for some pretty interesting roster construction because we have a guy starting way in the back who could be a potential dominator, but he's not going to look like one for where he's starting. So we'll talk about that. Could end up going 1 Dom plus PD on this track if you're using the driver I'm talking about, which I'm sure you guys all know, but I'll save it for when we get to the driver by driver breakdown portion. But just keep in mind, there is a lot of dominator points available, so don't completely dismiss them. You're going to want to get them in your lineup because if you don't have any Doms, you're going to get dusted in tournaments. And I do want to mention, if you are looking for similar tracks to Dover, I always have called it Big Bristol. It's the other concrete track. It's still a big bowl kind of. It's like, you know, Bristol's bigger brother is what I always like to call it. I also think you can kind of throw in Darlington as another steep track, but after that, it's kind of about it. There's maybe other tracks you can make some slight comparisons to, but drivers that are good at Bristol and Darlington tend to have some solid performance here at Dover. And moving on to our driver by driver breakdown, if you're wondering my overall thoughts on the pricing for this slate, I think DraftKings did a pretty good job. It is not easy to jam in all the best drivers. Like the past few races where we've had a lot of laps, it's been kind of way too easy to just throw in all the dominators you want. Now you really have to think about it, and with the way qualifying shaked out, I mean, you really have to think about it. We're gonna have to dive into this a little bit and try to figure out who the heck we want to play because there's not much to differentiate between Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott here, both above $11,000. You can't just jam them in both together quite easily. Then you have William Beyer, and the big PD play I was talking about. He's starting all the way back in 33rd after he had issues in practice, and he's going to be a very popular play. And yeah, not that easy. I remember, I believe it was Richmond where we had 2 guys above 10K for a 400 lap race. You could throw in 4 dominators quite easily. Not going to be the case this weekend. I do want to mention qualifying just ended and practice just ended. I was also on an awesome MLB show during the first part of qualifying. So this is my first reactions to this slate. Like I just put the numbers in and I'm just now looking at it. I don't know where half these guys qualified. So you're getting my first real reaction thoughts to the slate. And obviously it'll be more up to date over on the Patreon and the live show on Sunday morning. And that does make me want to mention that tomorrow is the first of the month. So it is the best time to sign up over on Patreon. If you want access to the spreadsheet that I am showing you, you can get access to it. Link can be found down below. And there's a lot more to it than just what I show you on YouTube. There's projections for all sites. There's my own personal GP driver exposures and optimizer ownership projections, which are pretty accurate compared to most everybody else out there. There's simulation scores, or a bunch of sims for the race each and every single weekend, and much, much more. Power rankings, all that fun stuff in a Discord community. So if you want to join, You know where to find it. Beginning of the month, best time to do so. Anyway, let's get into the slate here. Kyle Larson up top, nearly $12,000, the most expensive driver on both sides. He is starting P3. He's got the best odds to win this race. I know Kyle Larson hasn't really been Kyle Larson this year compared to what he was last season, but hard not to like him here at Dover. He's great at Bristol. He's amazing at Darlington. He's also very good here at Dover, as you can see. Nearly 100 DraftKings points per race, average finish of 4.5. He's got a win, 3 top 5s, over 100 laps led per race. And if you're looking at the recent finishes, similar tracks, first, second, and second. So no reason really not to like Kyle Larson here. He's also fast in practice. I will say practice kind of sucked for DFS purposes because we didn't get a whole lot of data. Obviously, Byron didn't do anything. We had a couple other drivers that didn't even post us any numbers, and just wasn't what I was wanting from practice. I wish we got a lot more, but hard to argue that Larson doesn't have a good car here. I mean, top 5 everywhere, top 2 in the 10, 15, and 20 lap. Have to imagine he's going to be fast. He's starting close to the front. I definitely think he's one of the best dominator plays on the slate. As far as cash games go, I am not sure yet who I'm going to pair with William Byron. William Byron is the cash game lock. You're going to have to find another dominator besides him. I've not yet ran my projections. I have not yet ran ownership, so I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to go. But I know for certain I'm going to be rostering Byron plus one of these top-level dominators that I'm going to talk about. And there's 3 that I like a lot, Kyle Larson being one of them, and Chase Elliott being another one of them. $11,300. Second most expensive driver on both sides. He is starting P4, tied for the second best odds to win this race. Now, this was pre-practice and qualifying, so these numbers will probably change a little bit, but nothing to really say that Elliott shouldn't be one of the top picks to win this race. He was top 5 across the board in practice, first in the 15, first in the 20 lap. He's pretty good at Dover, really good at Bristol, also pretty good at Darlington, so pretty good at all the similar tracks here. I know Elliott does have some poor numbers a little bit at Dover, but a couple of races did really skew his stats. I believe there was one race, I forget if it was last season or the year before that, but I want to say it was like 10 laps into the race. He got clipped, and he was riding around in the back all day, so that's just going to kill the running position and the average finish overall. And I think he wrecked at one of them, but if you look at the broader picture, he's got to win 4 top 5s the past 6 races and some also decent dominator points. And if you're looking at the recent finishes at similar tracks, issues the past 2, 25th and 31st, but then 3rd, 7th, 7th. I think Chase Elliott's going to be fine. He's been fast this year. I realize that finishes haven't exactly been there too much, but he's definitely been one of the best cars this year. Hendrick is very good at Dover. See no reason why he can't be a top-level dominator. It's just really hard to pick between Elliott or Larson. I think it comes down to just whoever you can fit the most in your lineups. William Byron, 11K, starting in 33rd. He was one of my favorite plays heading into the weekend. Now he's starting not dead last, but pretty close to it. No reason not to like him. Hendrick seems to be very good here at Dover. 2 top 5s at Dover the past 6 races here. Starting 33rd, I don't really think I have to say too much other than, yeah, he's got top 5 potential, race winning potential, and he's starting in the 30s. No reason not to like William Byron here. He's been one of the best cars all season long. Dropping down to the 10K range, Joey Logano, $10,600. He's starting in 22nd. I think he's a somewhat interesting pivot off of William Byron because Byron's going to have a ton of ownership, and for a good reason. But Logano's an interesting play here. He had a decent car in practice, was top 10 across the board. He's okay at Dover. I mean, 2 top 5s, 5 top 10s. He's a little bit more than okay. But compared to some of these other Hendrick guys, he hasn't been quite as dominant. Hasn't really had a dominator car. I mean, 6.2 laps led per race. Okay amount of fast laps, but we know he's very good at Bristol. I will say that. But starting in 22nd, I think he's an interesting play. I mean, everyone's playing Byron, so if you're just looking for that direct pivot, I think Logano is a pretty intriguing tournament play. Now, I was looking over some of his 2022 numbers so far this season. He's actually been a lot better than I thought. I feel like I haven't played too much Logano, but he does have an average finish at the top 10, one of the best running positions, good driver rating, 2 top 5s and 3 top 10s. So he's been better than I thought. So I wouldn't forget about Logano. Don't put all of your money on William Byron. I would definitely get to some Joey Logano shares there. And Ryan Blaney, $10,300. He is starting in 5th, a driver that's super good at Bristol. Not so good at Darlington, but his numbers at Dover aren't super impressive either, with 0 top 5s, 0 top 10s. Typically a top 15 guy, but you're going to need more than top 15s from a driver this expensive. But track history has shown to not be too important so far this year, because if we were basing everything off of track history, we would not have played Ryan Blaney at Richmond, and he obviously dominated Richmond, did very well there. So I don't really care about track history much. Just whoever's been fast in the next-gen cars and whoever's fast in practice tends to be pretty fast during the race, and Blaney has been arguably the fastest driver. I believe he is first in average green flag speed at the normal tracks that we've had so far this year. And look at practice, second in the 5 lap, fourth in the 10, third in the 15. Should be a threat to dominate. You can get about $1,000 some discount from Blaney from guys like Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson. So if you can't quite get up to those guys, Blaney should definitely be in the mix to be a top level dominator. I don't think it's as likely he dominates over Elliott and Larson, but he certainly has the potential to do so. So I definitely want shares, especially in tournaments. Not sure I'll be able to get there in cash games, but we will see if he happens to fit in my lineup nicely. Might be fine, but I really do think Larson or Elliott does dominate this race. Alex Bowman, $10,100. He's starting in 6th. I mean, all the Hendrick drivers look good. He won this race last year. He has 4 top 5s here the past 6 races. I have nothing bad to say about Alex Bowman. He definitely has a great history here at Dover, and the Hendrick cars should be very strong once again. It's just this price point's a little bit tough to get to, and if you're playing William Byron or Joey Logano pairing up with the Dominator up front, you're running out of money quickly. You can't really comfortably play 3 10K plus drivers, especially if a couple of those guys are $11,000. So he's purely a tournament play only for me. I would rather get to Ryan Blaney, but I wouldn't completely cross up Alex Bowman after list. Drop into the 9K range, you have Martin Truex Jr., $9,800, so it's a fair price point. He's starting 18th. The thing for me this year is if the JGR cars are pretty bad in practice, they're usually pretty bad during the race. I mean, the price points are fine for sure, but with the way it's been this season, I'd much rather get like Reddick and Chastain at $1,000 discount than paying, I don't even want to call it a premium because they're cheaper than what you normally expect, but the JGR cars outside of a couple of races have not been very strong this year. I know Martin Truex is excellent at Dover. He's been one of the best drivers here, but starting 18th, I could just kind of see him stuck around like a top 12 car all day, but not getting up front, which is what you kind of need at nearly $10,000. So I can't imagine I'll be too high on Truex. Denny Hamlin's interesting just because of the track position, and he is starting up beside Chris Buescher, so there is the chance he could get out front to start the race. But like I said, JGR cars, slow in practice, usually slow during the race, and he was 18th in the 5 lap, 18th in the 10 lap. I know practice, we didn't get a ton of telling numbers, but I'd like to see it a little bit better than that. I know Denny Hamlin is good at Dover. I don't think he's a complete fade. I will have some exposure to him, but I'll probably end up being underweight. I'm just trying to get more overweight on the 200 cars in the row behind him. Kevin Harvick at $9,300. He is starting in 11th. He's an interesting target here because we know he's super good at Dover. I mean, 90 DraftKings points per race. Average finish of 4.2, the best running position, 4 top 5, 6 top 10s, the best driver rating. Hard to argue against Kevin Harvick if you're just looking at that. I will say he's not the Kevin Harvick of the past where he just dominates every single race, but if we're looking at the recent finishes at similar tracks, and this is even going back just to last year, which I know is a whole different car, but second at Bristol, fifth at Darlington, sixth, first, and first. $9,300 for a guy that has been pretty solid so far this year. If you're looking at 2022 season specifically, one of the best average finishes, tied right there with Kyle Busch for the best of the 5 race sample size I am using of normal tracks, non-super speedways, or road courses. Close to 50 DraftKings points per race, top 15 each every single time, 3 top 10s and a top 5. I think Kevin Harvick is a fine play on this slate, and I think you can kind of say the same exact thing for Kyle Busch at $9,100. He is starting in 10th. Of all the JGR drivers, he's probably been the best one to roster so far this year, right there with Christopher Bell. And at least he was able to show some speed in practice, and this price point is pretty nice. Looks like he has a arguably top 5 car. Looking at the numbers of Dover, it's not quite as good as his teammates, Martin Truex Jr. or Denny Hamlin, but this price point's pretty solid for Kyle Busch, and he has been pretty good so far this year. Like I mentioned, tied for the best average finish with Kevin Harvick at the normal tracks. 4 top 10s, has a top 5, no wins so far at the normal tracks. Did win Bristol Dirt at the very end, kind of backed into that one. But I think Kyle Busch is a fine play at his price point, probably a better tournament target more than anything. Tyler Reddick, $8,800. He's starting in 26. I imagine he's going to be pretty high owned just because he's starting at the very back. It's Tyler Reddick. He has been super fast this year. I talked him up over on the top 5 picks Osmo video where I'm betting on drivers with a lot of talent and the guys that have been fast so far this year, and Tyler Reddick checks both of those boxes. A little pricey, maybe close to $9,000, but I honestly think Tyler Reddick should be more expensive than Truex and Hamlin so far this year, and probably Ross Chastain can be grouped right in there with Tyler Reddick. But yeah, starting 26, he's certainly a fine play, cash game viable, playing just about everywhere, would feel pretty good about it. Ross Chastain, $8,600. I usually view him as a similar play to Tyler Reddick, but he is starting about 20 spots further up. So if you're playing Chastain, you have to hope he at least holds his position, picks up some fast laps, and maybe gets up front, which in the past is something I would not expect of Ross Chastain. But from what he's done so far this year, that is definitely not out of the question. We know how good he's been this year, 3 top 5s. He has an average running position of 11th, average finish of 11.6, over 50 DraftKings points per race. Chastain has been awesome. I don't think it's out of the question for him to get up front and dominate. Look at the practice numbers. I don't believe we got much out of him. Yeah, only have a 5-lap run. Was P15, but that's not a whole lot of data to go off of, so I'm not going to make any rash decisions there. I would definitely get some Chastain exposure in tournaments. Would not go there in cash games, though. Chase Briscoe, $8,300. He is starting in 23rd. Another guy, like these three drivers, Reddick, Chastain, Briscoe, you kind of group them all together where they've been those mid-range drivers that have kind of surpassed expectations and have been able to run up front so far this year. And starting in P23, I think you have to have some interest in Chase Briscoe. We got nothing from him in practice. But if you look at the numbers this year, he's been very solid, has a win, has a top 5, 2 top 10s, just solid overall numbers. I would get to some Chase Briscoe exposure. Probably won't be as high owned as Tyler Reddick, but he's a little bit cheaper and a decent pivot there. And then Christopher Bell, $8,100. He is starting in 17th. Christopher Bell is a guy I usually just play at the short flat tracks. Like, yeah, you can play him at other places depending on his price and starting position, but I'm not seeing a lot to love here from Bell. Starting P17, 10 lap in practice was P17, P6 in the 5 lap, which was nice, but I would rather probably get everybody else in the 8K range. I don't think we have too much exposure to Christopher Bell here. Just doesn't really seem like a guy that's going to project like well above where I would expect him to be. Then dropping down to the 7K range, we'll start with Daniel Suarez. Not a lot of interest starting in P8. Didn't get really anything from him in practice. Looking at his history at Dover, does have a couple top 10s looking at so far this season. Average finish of 19th, running position of 22nd. Does have top 5 and 2 top 10s, but a little hit or miss of a driver. I just personally don't have much interest starting P8. Definitely will be under the field on whatever his ownership projection ends up coming out for me. Brett Keselowski, $7,700. I do have a little bit of interest in the RFK cars here, and one of them just happened to qualify in the pool. Was not expecting that. But I do think Keselowski can show some speed at a short track. It never feels great playing Keselowski, especially this year. We only have one thing to look at, which was his 5-lap run, which he did end up being first there. Can't really look at the recent track history much because he was in a Penske car, but he did run pretty well here. And we know he's good at Bristol. We know he's good at Darlington. If you're looking at what he's done so far this season, though, it's definitely not been pretty with an average finish of 20.8. And the running position just about there as well with only one top 15 finish. So he's a risky play, but I do think there's a little bit of upside with Keselowski if he can show some speed. But I'm not going to really bank on it too much. But the first and the 5-lap was encouraging, and we'll say that. Austin Dillon, $7,600. Love him over on FanDuel. He's only $6,300. Starting in 24th, wish he was faster in practice, was 25th in the 5-lap and 16th in the 10. Although I will say there's been a couple instances this year where Austin Dillon was not fast in practice, but he showed speed during the race. I'm not going to overreact to it too much. And Austin Dillon's good just about everywhere now. He's very good at Dover as far as just grabbing top 15s, top 20s. He does that pretty much each and every single time. And if you're looking overall this year, we're talking about an average finish out of the top 10 with 2 top 5s, 3 top 10s, and 4 top 15s. I have a hard time seeing him lose spots here. I think he's a good bet for contending for a top 15 finish, which is a solid day at $7,600. And there's always upside for him to crack inside the top 10. So I do like Austin Dillon quite a bit. Kurt Busch, $7,500. He is starting in 16th. Another guy I don't really have a ton of interest in. He was P10 in the 5-lap and P12, so I don't think he's a terrible play by any means. But the problem with the 7K range is that I'm probably going to be pretty top heavy on my drivers. So I'm going to get to a lot of Arson, a lot of Elliott, a lot of Beyer, obviously, probably a lot of Blaney. And at that point, I can't just start fitting in a bunch of mid-range guys either. I'm going to have to dip down to the 5K range to balance out my lineup. Like, yeah, you can like these guys, but if you like the dominators, which you're going to have to think about your roster construction where you're going to run out of money. You have to find some value, so you're going to be pretty top heavy. So this whole 7 to maybe, I guess you can kind of lump the 8K range in there as well, is going to just go a bit overlooked because people can't afford them with the lineups they are building. So you have to keep that in mind. Busch is interesting, but nothing I'm going to write home about. If he gets into 8 to 10% of my lineups, I guess I'll be okay with it, but I'm not going to single him out. Austin Cinder gets $7,300. He is starting in 12th. Decent practice numbers, was top 12 across the board. The problem is he is starting P12, and I wouldn't say it's been an amazing season for Cindric so far. Outside of a couple races, average finish 17.2. With 0 top 10s at the normal tracks, I probably won't get to a ton of Cindric. But Wallace, another guy I'm probably just not going to get a lot to of. And I'm kind of glad I don't like these guys much because the way my roster construction is going to work out, I can't get to a lot of them anyway. So I just probably won't get to much. Bubba, Ricky Stenhouse starting in 15th. I would have a hard time getting behind Stenhouse. He's just been so awful this year no matter where we are. He was P14 in the 10 lap. I'll give him that, but not a ton of drivers ran 10 lap runs. So starting in P15, we can barely trust him starting P30, so he's another guy I'm just not going to get a lot to of. 6K range gets a little bit better. We have some interesting plays, and if you're thinking of how roster construction works, these guys will probably fit into our lineups a bit. Erik Jones starting P25. He's been a little hit or miss this year. Started off the year hot. He's fine at Dover, does have some good runs here. The problem is, a lot of those were in the JGR car. No longer the case these days. If you're looking at his overall numbers in 2022, does have that one top 5, but average finish around 20th place. He's a fine PD play, but he's probably going to project for me to finish around 18th to 20th, which I'm not sure it's going to be optimal. He's a fine play, though. Eric Almirola, $6,600. He's starting in 27th. A very similar play to Erik Jones. You're probably going to project them to finish somewhat closely to each other. Vin's not good in practice, though, and his 5-lap run was P27, which is right where he's starting. I do have my concerns with that. But again, these guys are just PD plays down low, but I'm not gonna write up Eric Almirola or Erik Jones on an article to say to play them. If they happen to fall into your laps at the end, if you're building multiple lineups and they just kind of get shuffled in there, that is fine. I can't see anything good about them. I really can't see anything too bad about them either. Chris Buescher is probably the one you guys want to hear my thoughts on. He is starting on the pole, and Kyle Arson did say it's probably going to be pretty hard to pass at this track. The thing is, he's got some really fast cars right behind him. He's got Chase Elliott right there. You have Kyle Larson right there, Bowman, Ryan Blaney, even Denny Hamlin, I know is not super fast in practice and hasn't really been fast this year. He's starting right beside him. I would say it's a tough task for Chris Buescher to hold these guys off for a long time. Could he lead some laps at the beginning? Sure, but unless he's going to finish inside the top 5, top 10, depending on how many laps he leads. If he leads like a good chunk of stage 1, yeah, he'll probably be in the optimal lineup, but I don't really see that happening. He was 17th in the 5-lap, 10th in the 10. It's not like Chris Buescher is going to come out here and just completely dust the field. I do think he gets passed somewhat early, but there is the chance he can lead some laps. I'm not playing him in cash games. There is no chance I will do that, but in tournaments, I think he's worth a sprinkle just in case he can lead some laps, but he's not a safe play by any means, because I do think there's a very strong chance we get a Hendrick car passing him pretty soon into the race. AJ Allmendinger, $6,200, very cheap over on FanDuel. He's starting in 19th. Decent practice speeds, was P13 in the 5, P6 in the 10. Looking at his history at Dover, average finish at 22nd, running position of 22.7. I wish he was starting further back. I just I can't see myself playing too much Dinger. A guy I could probably see myself getting to a little bit more, though, is Cole Custer at $6,100. He is starting all the way back in 30th. And for whatever reason, Cole Custer has a pretty good history here at Dover. It's a smaller sample size, but an average finish around 10th place with 2 top 10s and 3 top 15s. I just wish he showed me some practice speed, but he was 26th in the 5-lap. So I do have my concerns there. Like, yes, I know the track history is good. I was kind of talking him up earlier in the week, but I'm willing to change my mind. Like, drivers that have been slow in practice typically have been slow during the race. So I have my concerns with Cole Custer there. Is he a fine surface play if you're looking at the numbers starting in P30? Yes, but I think there's some other better plays down low for cheaper. But I'm not going to write off Cole Custer. He's a guy I'm going to play. But I just wish he showed me some better practice speeds. Dropping down to the 5K range, Todd Gillan starting in 31st. Back to his natural habitat in the 5K range, starting in the 30s. He is your boring place differential play in the back that contends for top 25s every single week, so you can certainly play him. I have no problem with that. Looking at his numbers so far this year, an average finish just inside the top 20 with the running position just inside the top 25. Both will work for me at his price point. Not my favorite play down low. We'll talk about them in a little bit, but he is a fine play nonetheless. And probably the most interesting play here, not my favorite play, but the most interesting play is Ryan Preece at $5,700. He is only $2,000 over on FanDuel. I know he's in a Rick Ware car in the 15 this week, but he showed a lot of speed. And Ryan Preece, we know in the past, he's shown upside. But man, I was not expecting this from a Rick Ware car. He was 3rd in the 5-lap, 2nd in the 10, 4th in the 15, and 4th in the 20. I don't know how this happened in a Rick Ware car, but it did. He has speed. Do I think he's going to contend for a top 10? No, but if he can contend for a top 15 at $5,700, that's not bad. If you're playing over on FanDuel, I don't think he's a bad punt to fit in all the studs you want. I mean, he is free at $2,000, but I will say this was a very surprising practice session for Ryan Preece. I was certainly not expecting that, so I do think he has some upside. And as far as Justin Haley goes, Could be a top 15 contender to show top 15 speeds in practice, but probably not a guy I'm going to play a ton of. I'd almost rather play Ryan Preece, to be honest, with how fast he was. It just does not feel good to play Rick Ware Car because we know they can fall apart at any given notice, but probably won't be playing too much Justin Haley. But guys I will be playing a lot of are right below him, Todd Gillan, Harrison Burton. I guess you could kind of throw in Michael McDowell there. Not sure exactly how much I'll get to him, but man, I really like Todd Gillan starting in 34th. But only $5,400. Going to be very popular. And I think most people do go with 2 punts this week. I think in cash games, everyone's playing Byron, everyone's playing Gillan, everyone's playing Harrison Burton. Because if you play those 2 scrubs down low, that could realistically gain you around 10 spots. You're opening up a lot of salary for you to fit in multiple dominators and maybe an 8K guy like a Tyler Reddick or a lower 9K guy, whatever way you want to go. But Gillan does not need to do much to pay off value. His numbers so far this year with an average finish inside the top 25, I would take 10 spots gained out of Gillan. He just spent the very beginning of practice, I think it was his right rear or left. It was a rear. He ended up damaging it up a little bit, but not going to be too bad. He'll be fine. Michael McDowell, not been good so far this year at the normal tracks. Average finish to 28th, running position inside the top 25 though, which is fine. Just getting a little bit unlucky with the finishes, I guess. But it's not been too pretty. He'll be lower owned than Gillan or Burton, but I think it's for a good reason. I'll be lower on him than the 3, but I will have a little bit of exposure just to get, because I don't want to play like 50% of Gillan and Burton. I'll have to get a little bit lower than that. But Burton is going to be the massive chalk down low. He's only $5,000, and he is priced below cars that he's got better equipment. Like he's in a Wood Brothers car, it's not junk. He should be able to run. I mean, he should have top 20 upside in this race. I know this year it's not been amazing for him. Average finish at the top 25, running position of 23.7, but starting all the way back in 35th, you do not need to do much to hit value here. And as long as you hit on your dominators and Burton doesn't wreck, there's a decent chance that we see Burton in the optimal lineup. And the 4K guys, LaJoie, starting too high up for me to have much interest. It might help him stay in the lead lap for a while, having that track position, so I guess I wouldn't write him off, but I would rather get the PD guys, but track position might help him out. So if he stays in the lead lap for a decent amount of time, if he finishes 24th, that's not the worst day at below $5,000. Then the scrubs, I don't play them. You probably shouldn't either. We don't usually see them in the optimal lineup at a normal track. Cody Ware, Bilicki, BJ McLeod, if you were playing them, I would try to reevaluate my lineup and get a little bit more money for a guy like LaJoie, Burton, McDowell, or Todd Gillan. But with that being said, I will get out of here. I wish you all the best of luck. This is a very fun slate. I think you can go several directions. There's a lot of chalk that you could end up fading. You get some leverage on the field, and there's also some pretty good chalk that I think you should play. So it's going to be a fun one. If you want to check out the Patreon, lots of extra content over there. Put a lot of work into it. But if you do sign up, please wait until Sunday morning so you don't get double charged. I can always refund you, but it's harder on both of our, at least it's harder for me. But sign up on Sunday. All the extra content over there, projections for all the sites, prize picks, whatever, you name it, ownership projections, the optimizer, what I use each and every single weekend. I post my exposures, do simulation scores, all that fun stuff. It's been pretty accurate so far this year. Love to have you over there. You can come and hang out, chat in the Discord. It's a fun time. Always look forward to that. And you can check out the sponsor of the show, Prize Picks. Use code CPEN to get that free instant deposit match bonus up to $100. That is free money. Please use it to your advantage. There is no strings attached. To sign up using the code CPEN with the link down below or over on prizepicks.com. You can follow me on Twitter at ChrisPennell16, over at CPEN16 on the IG. But I think that's it. I will stop plugging. Wish you all the best of luck, and I hope to see you on Sunday morning for the live stream. It's a fun time to hang out with y'all.